to touch on a few other things. Beth and I work for the Iowa Department of Economic Development. Our mission in life, we get gold stars when a company comes to Iowa, establishes a manufacturing facility, makes a big capital investment, and creates a lot of jobs. And we'd get a gold star whether that was a wind generation company or a widget manufacturer. But we found that there's more activity and there's more potential in attracting wind manufacturers than there is any other manufacturer in the globe. When I say that, I mean for Iowa, there's more opportunity to attract wind manufacturers than there is any other kind of manufacturing. And we'll try and prove that here. David Osterberg's been a friend for years and years. I was a junior high student. No, I was in the insurance business when in 1983 they passed the renewable portfolio standard in Iowa, and I've been proud of Iowa ever since. Policy is a key element in the success that we've had. And this slide is our second slide in almost every presentation. And what we say is that Iowa embraces wind from the top to the bottom. Governor Culver is coming out of a wind turbine in northwest Iowa at 265 feet. That's a long ways up, almost a football field. It's on top of a turbine that was manufactured in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, a Clipper turbine. And it goes from the top to the bottom. David talked about tax breaks that are given by county supervisors. And those tax breaks are important, just as important as a call from the governor to the president of the company. And our governor does that frequently. I would vary just a little bit from David in that not only is it policy, but it's other drivers that make Iowa such an important state for wind. And the other driver is logistics. Wind equipment is big, it's heavy, it's very expensive to transport. A friend of mine asked me what I thought was the most expensive component of a wind turbine once it was erected. And I said, well, geez, I think maybe it's the gearbox. No, not the gearbox. Well, what about the blades? Nope, not the blades. Well, what about the tower? Nope, not the tower. Okay, what the hell is it? It's the transportation to get it all there. Transportation costs more than all the other components in single items, not all together. So if you have 47% of all the turbines erected in 2008, that record year that David talked about, within 500 miles of Iowa, that's a one-day drive to deliver by truck. So you have cut the cost of delivery significantly. We had a study done by a person that David referenced, Tom Wind, of how much wind power would be installed within these concentric circles, basically a one-day drive around Iowa. And through 2014, $5.7 billion worth of turbines would be erected each and every year. That is the magnet that has drawn companies here, that they can be in the heart of that marketplace. We like to say that Iowa is at the nexus of the greatest wind resource in North America and the load demand. In other words, it's right in the middle of where the wind power is generated and the electricity is used. And that, we'd like to say we're awful good at that, but that's just the way luck is. And that's the way it is. Illinois, for instance, has a renewable portfolio standard about 10 times higher than Iowa's, but has less than 10% of the wind Iowa has installed. Now, that's because of wind resource. They have a lot of demand. I think Mid-America takes advantage of some of their demand with Iowa wind. So these are key elements. Logistics is a key element, but it goes with the right policy. Right next door is Nebraska. They have way better wind than we do, but they have way worse public policy. So they have less than 100 megawatts where we have 3,600. So you can see that the policy is a key element. The logistics are another key element. Having a heritage of manufacturing excellence is a key element. Having a lot of other things, but having good, smart workers is a key thing. I have a couple pieces that I just wanted to touch on going back to history. We started out with the history of wind. Actually, the history of wind power, wind-generated electricity in Iowa goes to a small wind turbine that was installed in thousands of farmsteads between 1886, when it was invented, the Bush turbine, just like the former president, and it was prevalent on Iowa farmsteads until 1935 when the Rural Electrification Act came. Because farmers, and I grew up milking cows, don't like to milk cows by hand. So if you can have electricity and run a milking machine, that's a terrific deal. And so all these farmsteads had wind turbines. Lots of people's grandpas and grandmas had wind turbines. And so a farmer now having somebody come and say, I'd like to put a wind turbine on your farm, that's somewhat natural and part of the history and heritage of Iowa farm life. And so there was a poll done by the Des Moines Register about 18 months ago, and it asked, should Iowa have more wind power installed? 76% of the respondents answered in the affirmative, yes, we should have more wind power. So we support it not only in policy, but we support it just as a people. And so I think that it's a key element to think of that, and that we don't have the same pushback that they have in a lot of other states. And now we figure out how to take this off. Here you go.
That's great, thank you. As Joe said, my name is Beth Govoni, and I work with Joe in tandem on sort of all of the projects and attracting the folks that come here to manufacture wind products. Been working with Joe long enough to know that he'll talk for a while and I'll talk for a little bit, so we're going to whip through to stay on your time frame. I think the one thing, though, that to keep this in a policy conversation is what we know about Iowa is we're early adapters, right? David talked about the industry being new in the United States. You know, really, it's 10 years old, getting to be 20 years old. And we were early to adapt policy. We had the first RPS in the nation. And with Joe's presentation, the economics came about. We have some manufacturing here, and now we're sort of back to a policy discussion. David also referenced the 20% by 2030 study that the Department of Energy and the American Wind Energy Association put out a few years ago. And so Iowa, again, was an early adapter. And we said, we think that we can be the first state in delivering electrons to meet that 20% by 2030 goal, and also gain the economic benefits. And so we put together some benchmarks for reaching that goal. And I will say, in the policy discussion, this is a goal. It's a stated goal by some state agencies. It's not been legislated, but it's a goal that we like to share and that we're working very hard to reach. So to talk about it in the form of nukes, in order to reach the 20% by 2030, Iowa would need to produce 50% of our electricity from wind power. That's about 10,500 megawatts, or 10 nukes. Our 2010 goal was 2,818. Does anybody remember how much wind we have installed in the state right now? Not you. Anybody else? Not you either. Yeah, please.
I'm sorry, the question, how much like output?
How much? Yep. How much wind do we have installed?
3,600.
Yeah, 3,670. So we've met our 2010 goal, and we're awful close to meeting our 2015 goal. If I was a betting woman, which I'm not, I bet that we would reach that in 2010. I will say that the part of this goal that we're not, that we don't publish is that we think that 20% of this wind can be consumed in the state of Iowa. And as we talked about, the Iowa Utilities Board thinks that's already happening between 15 and 20%. So that other 30% would be used for export to help other states meet their policy goals and renewable portfolio standards. And if we end up passing a national renewable portfolio standard, helping the nation meet that goal as well. But there's some really excellent benefits for the state of Iowa and for Iowans in reaching this goal. Every turbine that you see, almost every turbine that you see installed in Iowa, the farmer that owns that land, or the company that owns that land, is collecting a land lease payment. Targets are annually about $5,000 a year. That may be conservative for some farmers. That may be a lot of money for some farmers. They keep that pretty quiet, right? What they're getting for their turbine. But you can see the benefits at each benchmark that farmers or owners of land would get for these payments. You can also see what that would do to the local tax base. So by 2030, and these are incremental totals, by 2030 we're looking at about 20 million or billion? I'm going sideways. Huh?
Million.
Million, thank you. $20 million annually to farmers in land lease payments, and almost $30 million in local tax structure. So that does a lot for pushing policy in local communities, and it does a lot for rural economic development. The other thing that we're hearing a lot about these days that this can do for the state of Iowa is create jobs. And it can create really three types of jobs. The first being temporary, we call them temporary construction jobs. However, if we're installing wind turbines for the next 20 years, those are 20-year temporary jobs. We can also have operation and maintenance jobs. Turbines go up. Turbines are big mechanical engines, and sometimes engines have parts that fail. We're working on making that not happen or not happen as much, but we need people that will go up there and fix those turbines. And then lastly, we have manufacturing jobs. And Iowa has also been not only one of the leaders in installing wind in the state, but in attracting and creating manufacturing jobs. We've attracted in the past 5 years 10 companies who are manufacturing wind energy equipment in the state of Iowa. We have created or committed 2,300 jobs in those factories. That's only manufacturing jobs. I'm not counting construction jobs, and I'm not counting operation and maintenance jobs. We believe if we have some aggressive policies, and if we can fully utilize the American Reinvestment and Recovery Act, that we can create probably 10,000 jobs in the next 20 years. So that's exciting stuff. So we're working on that as well. Every day, pounding the pavement. We provided in our presentation a couple of links for you guys, and I would point out three specifically. The first is IA Wind, the one at the top, and I know that's a really horrible font. I tried to fight that all day, and PowerPoint outdid me. But it's the Iowa Alliance for Wind Innovation and Novel Development. Barry Butler, the dean of the Mechanical Engineering School, College of Engineering, here at the University of Iowa, is one of the leaders in making sure that we are producing students that can benefit the industry, and he's right here in your backyard. There's a conference put on by this group, April 6th. There's a low price for students. Anybody who's interested, I would definitely encourage you to look at that link. We have a very exciting Duracell commercial, part of the Iowa Lakes Community College wind turbine that you guys saw. And additionally, we spoke a little bit about the I touched on the American Reinvestment and Recovery Act, and there's a nice piece that NPR did on how that stimulus package has really affected Clipper Wind Power, which produces just up the road in Cedar Rapids, which manufactures up there. So I would encourage you guys, if you get a chance, to check those out. Look forward to your questions.